The challenge is that we don't have language for our preferences, most of us. Even the most self-aware people listening right now, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, you're already self-aware. But even you that's listening, you don't have enough language for the nuances and the distinctions around what you actually prefer doing. And if you did, you'd shape your world even clearer. You'd guide yourself, even more directly, and you would recruit and you would delegate more responsibly. That's what would happen. So we help people see what they need to see so they can shift it so they can win.
At the crux of all organizations is leadership. From ensuring important deadlines and KPIs are hit to fostering company culture, leadership is amongst the most prevalent influences that determine a company's success. Today, Avetis sits down with Adrian Koehler, a leadership coach that has trained and developed leaders in the Navy SEALs, Nike, the Oprah Winfrey Network, Gavin DeBecker and Associates, Siegel and Gale, UCLA, and more. Let's dive in.
Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to the Tech Leaders Playbook. Today's guest, I'm very, very excited and honored to have on. His name is Adrian Koehler. He is a very successful leadership coach. He is the founding partner of Take New Ground. Basically what he does is he helps entrepreneurs take their companies to the next level. No BS guy, straightforward. In 2 conversations with me, I've already learned a ton, especially with the harassment assessment. I'm super excited to talk to you again, Adrian. We had lunch together. That was awesome. We talked a couple of days ago. That was awesome. I'm already executing on some of the advice you gave me. So thank you for being here. I'm really glad I can bring this type of knowledge to my folks that listen to the show.
Awesome, man. Really honored to be here. Yeah, similar. Sometimes you sit down with people and it's awkward. Sometimes you sit down and it's like your brothers. It was the latter with us. It's like, oh, I like this guy. And if there's ever any way we could do some work, I sit down, I'm like, this is the type of guy I love working with. So I'm sure people that listen to you like your vibe as well. So hopefully we can jive.
Love it. I'm sure we will. Adrian, I always want to hear the story, man. You're obviously highly successful. You got to this point, but there's a bunch of stuff in between. I'd love to just understand your journey up to this point.
Sure. So as you mentioned in the quick intro, Adrian Koehler, I coach executives. Most of the executives I work with are founders of companies, owners of companies. I've worked with people of all stripes and all different industries and all different sizes of companies. And I just prefer working with entrepreneurs. I'm the type of crazy that they are. And so I understand them and they're distinct. And most people don't respect them enough to tell them the truth. And I find that most of them are just dying for somebody to just look them in the eye and believe in them, number one, and then also not believe them at the same time. Like raise the bar. Like when somebody's full of shit, just say it. Hey, here's what I think. And have you considered what's happening? Anyway, my kind of smelling salts approach usually jives well with people that are really highly leveraged because they want the truth. So anyway, my forte is working with entrepreneurial companies. And I don't hate on my corporate folks. I'm just bored by most of them. So we will do some work with the Nikes of the world and some, kind of some the more aggressive brands just because they're fun. But anyway, so yes, and I've got a stellar team. I co-founded this company with a mentor of mine named Dan Tacchini, who's been in this world for a very long time, and he's world class. I just try to keep up. And then, so we do coaching and training and consulting work, right? So a lot of one-on-one work with founders and then with their teams, and we'll take people off site and have the most honest conversation they've ever had. The challenge, like the invite that connects our people to us is we ask them, how much truth can you handle and how much courage can you summon? And those 2 things are necessary for anybody that's going to work with us. So we're not here to put a fresh coat of icing on a shitty cake. We're here to take the cake apart. Let's get real about it. Who made this cake? Let's talk about that. And why did this make sense at that stage? And what's working, what's not working. We don't have to throw everything out, but there's a lot of things that aren't working. Let's just get real about it. We got one trip around the bases here in this thing called life. Let's make this count. Like that type of, we call it fierce advocacy, our people love. And I love waking up in the morning and feeling a calling to go have the deepest conversations, most significant conversations, most life-changing, most vital, like that. I will never get off that drug of how do we make life matter, make a moment matter, make a conversation matter. I'm weird, I realize, but that's what gets me up in the morning is like, wow, how do we make today count? So Anyway, but I haven't answered your question yet. That's what I do now. So I've been doing this for about 12, 15 years. This type of work, this type of engagement, as I've gotten the training and the clientele that I took on. I didn't start here though. I started out like a pre-med guy undergrad, was great at the science side of it and can memorize anything and loved any of the human anatomy type stuff. So what are you going to go be a doctor? Maybe. So I got in college and I'm like, I don't want to be a doctor. What should I do? But I wanted to travel the world, really wanted to help people, that kind of altruistic, be a part of. I mean, I came from a spiritual background as well, faith-based background. So that idea of helping put the world back together. The world is chaos and the world's broken and there's things that are, and there's injustice in the world, and how do you be a part of the redemption of humanity? That has always appealed to me. So I thought, how do I do medical stuff and travel? So I got a nursing degree. This was back 25 years ago. So, but I didn't want to be a nurse, but hey, it'll take me around the world. I'll make good money. There was a nursing shortage back then. Anyway, fast forward, worked at a children's hospital in Chicago and loved that work. Worked in the intensive care unit. So pediatric intensive care, kids that were on the brink, families that were on the brink of the hardest days of their lives. And my job was to stand between the medical staff, the doctors in the hospital and all that, and the patient, and make that work and help connect with families on these worst days, help kids survive, help kids forget, help kids, have an experience that made the horrible day better. And I loved it. I really loved it. So there's tons of drama in that context, obviously. And I was always drawn towards, give me the toughest family. Give me the ones that are like, won't talk to anybody or irate or horrible to other staff. Let me go work with them. And anyway, I loved that work. I didn't want to do it too long. I caught wind of I was with a team over in India. I took it on a team of 20 doing some medical stuff. And I was a musician back then with this guy named Yesu Bendela, who was essentially the Billy Graham of India. And anyway, during that, I heard this message by this guy, this speech, this sermon by this guy named Erwin McManus that talked about the barbarian way out of civilization. And he talked about the Christian faith, which I was brought up in, but pretty bored by. He talked about it in such a way that was really compelling. And so I actually moved out to LA to come be a part of that community. And I came out and I ran all of our service into the world. So we had like 3,000 people at the church, which is rare in a city church. And took people locally, took people globally, essentially was mobilizing humans to go make a difference. You'll see a trend here. And also doing a bunch of pastoral type stuff. So I'd sit down and have coffees with people as they were trying to put their lives together or make big decisions or lost or figuring out existential questions. I loved it, really loved that work. Out of that, I met a guy whose father was a billionaire. And he asked, so he's a millionaire by birth, and he asked me if he had this big spiritual transformation in his life that I got to be a part of. And he asked me, hey, would you help me figure out what to do with my money, like philanthropically? And I thought that's pretty fun because I've been on the people mobilizing side, the nonprofit world. And now all of a sudden I've got millions of dollars in a bank account and I can go make stuff happen. Long story short, took him around the world, exposed him to all the needs and all the great organizations that I was intimately connected with. By the end of it, he wanted to give a second chance to people who had really blown it, and that meant do work in the prison system. So we got in and via the Catholics, a couple nuns I followed into prison. They knew this group of lifers, and so everybody was murderers for the most part. Had murdered somebody 15, 20 years before. And we came in and started doing leadership trainings. That's where I met that guy, Dan Tacchini. Somebody connected me with him. He had been doing gang intervention work out of Boston and a pro at this spiritual transformation, human transformation. And we went in and started doing trainings with these murderers and then trained the murderers to be trainers so they could actually start mentoring their peers in the prisons. And, murderers, the lifers are usually the shot callers. They've been there the longest. They're the toughest. They're willing to do the worst things. So they get a lot of respect. So once we had a lot of transformation in their lives, essentially the core of that training is going from being a victim mindset, like I don't want to be in prison and it's the gang's fault, my dad's fault, but the color of my skin, the neighbor, whatever their story was, all of it's bullshit, all of it's justification for their choice. And if we could help them shift from being a victim to being responsible, then they're free. Even if they might not have gotten out of prison, they'd still be free and they wouldn't live in the resentment and the powerlessness and therefore the anger and the criminality. Because the further somebody goes down the victim stance, this is what connects even to my work day in and day out with founders, because this is human. The more victimized you are, the more criminal you'll be. And when it comes to founders and companies, the more everybody can be victimized by the board, by the investors, by the economy, by the president, by the stupid person I just hired, but whatever, fill in the blank. We can all be victimized by that person. The more criminal we'll be. That's criminal like what? Like we treat people really poorly. We don't give people what they need. We backbite. We gossip. We fire unfairly. We, steal money. A lot of people steal money. A lot of people act like a scoundrel in many ways. Anyway, the more victimized you are, the more criminal you'll be. So I did that work for about a couple years, and I loved it and set everything up. And then I wanted to go change the whole country. The guy that gave the money wanted to focus on this prison, which was wonderful, which just meant it was time for me to go. So then I could do whatever. I could work in the philanthropy world. I could work in the ministry world. I could work in the healthcare world. But during that, I'd been through lots of personal development trainings, which I love. Probably not a surprise. I've been through this coaches academy, which I really loved, and just made me a better executive director. And then I just decided to go be a coach, and that was I think coming up on 15 years now.
Wow.
And the rest is history.
This is where the tough love comes in.
That's it, man. That's it.
Wow, what a cool story.
I've always been drawn towards extreme environments because if in extreme environments the rules matter less, right? If the house is on fire, it's not about being polite.
Yeah.
It's about saving people's lives. And same thing, that's why I like extreme environments, because what matters most comes first. In non-extreme environments, other things that don't matter most come first, like politeness, like watch your language, like don't say that in public, like, hey, that's under the table, please leave that under the table. Let's wait till, let's do an anonymous survey instead of ask people direct questions. We do all those types of things. So I don't like those types of environments. I like things where people are really ready to get after it.
Love it. Love it. Adrian, what defines a high growth company? Because everybody wants to pretend they're growing and they're committed to growth, but it's not accurate.
Yeah. Well, what's your view of it? It sounds like you've got an interesting view of it.
There's companies lifestyle businesses. These are companies that want to grow, but I don't think they're necessarily willing to risk it all to grow or risk anything to grow, right? So what they do is they shrink their mindset, right? So they tighten up, and it becomes about where can I cut money to sustain my life for profitability versus no. We have a mission. Yes, we're in a recession right now, but where can we be smart and maybe cut some costs, but we're committed to growth even if it hurts. I think there's a different mindset, but I'm sure you've seen a lot of different companies that pretend they want to grow, but they aren't willing to make the sacrifices or the risks.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to be a high growth company, you have to be well-founded or crazy. And crazy in the sense that, right, I'm going to call people to an impossible mission, which is, hey, we're going to work. We're going to work 16-hour days. That's what we're doing around here. And people, and because we're gonna stay skinny, and I could go raise a bunch of money, give up a bunch of equity, so I can go have this bloat of extra employees, but I want Navy SEALs around here.
Wow.
So if you're crazy in that way, and I'm obviously joking, it's not that crazy. It's just really committed, and it's imbalanced, and people get a hard time if you're going to be that committed these days. They call it burnout. They call it all these types of things, but people are really connected and committed to the vision and are willing to sacrifice for it and are willing to do two jobs and not feel like a victim because of it. It's just fun. Or you could go out and raise a whole bunch of cash. Mostly, we're going to put all of our profits right back into it. So nobody's getting rich here for a long time. That's the goal. And we're going to take all of our profits, put right back into it, and hire some really smart people too. I mean, eventually you get to the place where you get to hire some talented folks. At least when a founder gets really, I would say, mature. What else do I want to say? That's really kind of it. Less insecure, for sure. Becomes secure. They start hiring people smarter than them, which is a pretty big jump for most founders, because you're the smartest person in the room, because you created the room, and then at some point you hire people smarter than you, and you find your spot among the crowd, which is it's a hard transition for every founder I work with. At some point, you get enough profits that you can do that, but everybody's willing to put their hand to the plow. That nobody's hiding, nobody's sitting back in theoretical land, And I would take, hiring doers all day long and just educating doers instead of hiring thinkers, and you got to try to motivate them. So high growth companies are all action oriented people.
Love that. Adrian, if you can, and I know we didn't prepare for this, so it's going to be a lot of thinking, which is great. Give me three adjectives for the founders that you've seen that truly have built great companies. What was their personalities? How would you describe them?
They are lopsided. They are ambitious, but tenacious. That's the other word that comes. Lopsided in the sense that they don't try to be all things for all people. They're just undeniably who they are.
Okay.
And really committed to something and an expert at something. And like the whole world is that thing for them. And they usually become really tough to deal with just because they're so committed to that thing and they're entranced by it, right? Like it becomes their world, which in some ways it must, right? The level of psychological ownership of the thing, they become their mission. Their company's not their company, it's a part of them, right?
Yep.
So that part of lopsidedness. Ambitious because they're not going to take no for an answer. They are a yes person. I will find a way. It's like I call them square peg, round hole people. The square peg will go through if you hit it hard enough. It'll just shave all the edges off. But you hit that sucker hard enough, it'll go through. So nothing's impossible for them. And they are very confident in their own ability. Even the belief in themselves will get them a lot farther than most people that'll sit back in their own insecurities and won't do anything about it. And they're just tenacious, right? They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop, which is great.
The ambitious and tenacious was expected. The lopsided was interesting because, again, we're always taught to be well-rounded, learn everything I need to know, and we have to realize, no, man, that's not my 20%. My 20% is my excellence, my superpower, my genius.
That's right.
The rest of it, I could either learn to be if I want to be, or I can hire great people that make me more well-rounded.
Right.
Adrian, you and I had a really good chat yesterday where we actually went over my Harrison report, and I'd love to get into that. But basically, there was some lopsidedness with me and some things like that. And I asked you a simple question. I said, hey, is this an area I should work on? Because I'm willing to. Or should I continue to hire against my weaknesses, which is totally doable. But I think you said based on this, you absolutely can work on these things if you'd like. What was that?
The self-improvement? Yeah, you have an off-the-chart self-improvement score, which anybody I work with has a high self-improvement score, right? They're committed to bettering themselves. And if you have that down, there's really nothing you can't learn. Now, should I learn it is a question. Like, should I give myself to learning that? My stance is that people love to kind of, Gallup came out 20 years ago and said, focus on your strengths, which is great, but you better own your weaknesses.
Yes.
You better own them. So it's not focus on your strengths and not act like your weaknesses aren't there. You better know that your weaknesses are there and either soak them in your intentionality while you're young, I was going to say, but while the company's small and you're doing everything, you better soak your weaknesses in your intentionality, like meaning the hardest thing, I'm going to do that first.
Love
the
it.
thing I want to put off, I got to do that first. I got to do it first thing in the morning, first thing in the week. A trick for me, as I place promises in the context of my weaknesses, meaning I don't want to do paperwork. I know I don't want to do paperwork. I don't want to write any proposals, but yet I need to. So I know whenever I got to do something, I got to write a 5-page document. I'm going to tell my business partner, hey, I'm going to send this draft to you by tomorrow at noon. Now, I signed up for that. Why? Because if I put myself on the hook, I'm not going to want to break my promise to myself, to him, look like a fool, all that. I'm not going to want to. I want to put it off, so I don't put it off, that kind of thing. So you better own your weaknesses, and you either need to either be more intentional about your weaknesses, which you must at the beginning, and or delegate very responsibly.
Speaking of hiring great people to overcome some of your weaknesses, because you can't just become so well-rounded you have no weaknesses. I don't believe in that.
They call that being delusional.
Absolutely. One of the things that we've always talked about with our clients, because we're a technology consulting and recruiting firm, my core business, HireCloud. I've never had vocabulary for it, but we constantly focus our clients on hiring the right people. And any client that ends up saying, no, you got to fill every one of these job description bullets or we won't interview this candidate, we're walking away from, because that is not correct. You called it eligibility to do the job versus suitability to do the job. And you had a great quote that I wrote down. If you don't mind, I'm going to steal it from you. You could just explain it. You said that if 70% 90% of the time you do what you prefer doing, you'll have a 300 to 400% success rate, higher success rate. Tell me what that's all about and what that means.
So we're referring to, for those listening here, this thing called the Harrison assessment. It's an underused training tool in the U.S. There's only 150 of us that have access to it, mostly Pacific Rim. A guy named Dan Harrison. Anyway, that's his study. So his theory is called the enjoyment performance theory. And without getting into a long thing about it, the punchline is that. So if I spend 70% of my time doing what I prefer doing, then my chances of success go up 300 to 400%.
Wow.
So the challenge is that we don't have language for our preferences, most of us. Even the most self-aware people listening right now, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, you're already self-aware. But even you that's listening, you don't have enough language for the nuances and the distinctions around what you actually prefer doing. And if you did, you'd shape your world even clearer. You'd guide yourself, even more directly, and you would recruit and you would delegate more responsibly. That's what would happen if you had more language. So we put people through this assessment. It takes you 25 minutes to stack rank all these things, and it gives a 46-page report of all these details around where you are right now, where the major tensions are, where you go under stress, what you ought to be delegating, where you are in relationship to your team. If you get your team to do it, we do these culture maps all the time, and it really illuminates dynamics. Some of those dynamics, if people don't see them, they can't shift them, and if they don't shift them, they're going to lose. So we help people see what they need to see so they can shift it so they can win. And that's what the Harrison assessment does, and it's a great tool.
Huge, life-changing for me. And I'm big on these things. I've done cultural index, which I think is great. I've done predictive index, great. I've hired doing that. I've done all kinds of DISC assessment, this assessment, and I think this was the most thorough and most intriguing because it found things that just didn't quite make sense, but that's what an entrepreneur is, right? And then potential pitfalls. Really appreciated that. I think every leader and their team should be doing this assessment with Adrian, so you guys hit him up. Adrian, you had another vocabulary for this. You said when you're doing what you prefer, you called it the preference and performance theory, you're in a virtuous cycle, right? You're cranking, you're happy, you're winning, right? And then when you're not, so you're naturally engaged. When you're not, you're in the vicious cycle, right? Even if you can do it, and even if you do a good job, even if they pay you well, you're not happy, you're not excited, you're not engaged, right?
Yeah, the virtuous cycle is when I like something. All right, when I like something, then I'm actually going to naturally be engaged in it. I'm going to throw myself at it. I'm going to participate. And if I get great results, I'm going to feel great. I'm going to get the good feedback, and it's going to be this like natural flywheel effect that Jim Collins talked about. Also, though, if I like it and I'm engaged in it and I get bad results, I'm not going to actually wear the bad results. I'm going to want to learn, right? And because I'm going to be tenacious and I'm going to throw myself at I thought that was going to work. I want to learn something. You get back up, dust yourself off, go again. That's the virtuous cycle of pursuing what I love. So, I love entrepreneurs so much. They're so passionate, and they really want to be free. No entrepreneur gets into anything if they don't want to be free. So, and that's like free from the corporate chains, blah blah blah, and all the forms of authority that are bullshit. But also freedom internally, like vitality. So this actually gives roadmaps for your own vitality. The other side is that vicious cycle when I don't prefer doing something, and we all have to do those things at times, but when I don't prefer doing something, I'm going to be less engaged naturally. And then if I get bad results, I'm going to use those bad results to prove why I shouldn't be doing the thing and probably grumble about it. But highly talented people like yourself, even if you don't like something and you're not that engaged in it, you still might get good results, and then you resent it even more.
Absolutely.
So because now, so every entrepreneur that's hearing this knows this feeling, because you're probably better than most people in your company at most things in your company, at least in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so it's really hard to give up what you're good at and train somebody. I mean, I'm in this conversation with founders all the time. That's why a lot of our work, most of our work, is undeniably relationship based, right? So it's all the invisible actually generates the visible, like the unseen, the relationships, trust, commitment, honesty, all those things that are unseen. that's what generates the culture, which generates the results. So that's why we have all these deep conversations.
Perfect segue, because one of the things that I see coming companies doing, and we have access to hundreds of companies, hundreds we represent, thousands of candidates that come out of thousands of companies, and so many companies do so many things to get people engaged. Perks, this assurance, that assurance, work from home whenever they want, and higher salary, and this proves that those are nice, those are bonuses. That's awesome if you can afford to do it. You might be able to get people to stay a little bit longer because their lives are more comfortable. But that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be happier. It's like same thing as when you have a family. If you just make your family more comfortable, doesn't mean they're necessarily happier, right? They're just more comfortable. They just don't stress about money. And yeah, maybe they see a little bit more in the world, but that's not happiness. Same happens at work. I believe that if you treat people really well and there's trust and they feel heard and all those good things, those real things, and you combine that most importantly with this preference performance theory where I want to do things that I'm good at and I enjoy doing, then I'm gonna thrive, and I'm intrinsically motivated, and you don't have to bribe me to do my job, and I don't leave the second someone offers me 10 or 20% more money. That's what great work and great culture to me is, not the shiny stuff that anybody can throw at.
I mean, we get bored of the shiny stuff pretty quickly. I mean, nothing outside of ourselves can generate our happiness anyway. They can distract us from our unhappiness. I mean, new things distracts us from our innate unhappiness. But nothing outside can ever generate happiness for us. That's a mindset. That's an attitude. That's a
Absolutely.
commitment. So if I want, and we know this stuff. I mean, everybody knows this now because it's been talked about for 25 years. It's like this is why successful people are sometimes the most unhappy people on the planet, because they've lived their life pursuing something and then they get it and they're just as miserable as they were yesterday. Well, it's because, the pursuit is over, right? And the pursuit of success is actually what's satisfying. Success, quote unquote, from an external perspective, is not that satisfying. It's really not. I mean, it can be nice and distracting, but it's not satisfying. The giving yourself to something that matters, we know that's where all the dopamine drops in. It's the pursuit of a goal, not hitting the goal. It's the pursuit of a goal. So, yeah, if you give people a whole bunch of stuff, you might distract them and might lure them over, but they're going to go back to being themselves, which is like humans, and like looking good and feeling good and being right and being in control. Those are the core survival needs. So you got to find a way to intervene in those and help call people into something that's meaningful. We know from the research that one thing that makes a difference for people and that to stay is that they have a best friend at work. So the quality of relationships at work. That's why if you're a leader and you're not really good at spotting conflict before it happens, intervening before it's bad, and ensuring that actually conflict turns into connection. Now, most people, that's like PhD level shit. But if you can turn conflict into connection, people will stay because there's not the soap opera. And here's the deal: you can get really low level people to stay in the soap opera, but high performing people won't stay because it's not worth the drama.
Because they're about their business. Right? They're about their money. They're about their promotion.
They want to get something done. That's right.
If anything stops from that and the leaders are paying attention to the drama instead of their performance and the help they need to take it to the next level, they'll leave. Most people, this is a big one, most companies spend so much time on their C players that they don't spend enough time with their A players. Oh, you got it. Squeaky wheel gets the oil or the grease or whatever, and what ends up happening is the stars leave and you're stuck with your C players. So it's extremely important to hire right by finding alignment, and this is a great way to find alignment. To obviously treat well. I love that conflict into connection, Adrian, because people are scared of conflict. Right? And we welcome it here because conflict is healthy. Conflict creates opportunities to go deeper and to learn things that you didn't know about someone. And next thing you know, that's your best friend. Like we've all joked and seen movies where your bully, or whether you're the bully or we're bullied, ends up being your best friend. How's that possible, right? It's possible because you all figured it out and you handled it like men and women, and you solved your issues versus being passive aggressive. So I really, really like that. Most people try to keep a perfect environment, no arguing. Same with families. I welcome conflict, especially in the workplace. With family, it's a little bit more challenging, right? Because you want to keep things at peace and calm and cool, and you want to relax. At work, let's get down. Let's get in the conference room. Let's fight. Let's figure this out. As long as we all could be honest with ourselves and our colleagues.
Well, even at home, I get it. I mean, I think peace is a great aim, but you don't get real peace without going to battle from time to time.
I agree.
And most relationships turn cold because they stop dealing with the core issues, and they stop dealing with core issues because there's a potential conflict in there. So, like getting in there and like sharing here's a way I think about it is I need to practice sharing my considerations way before they get to conflict. Right, because I've got thoughts, and I see kind of the storm on the horizon, and I need to talk about it now when I see the storm clouds brewing, and not wait until it's pouring all over me. I want to talk about it like, oh, look at this cloud. Here's what might be in that cloud. Let's talk about it. Let's get shoulder to shoulder and talk about it, and before it gets so adversarial that finally now I'm so pissed I just have to talk about it, and it comes out passive aggressively, and then you're not even having the real conversation. Now you're just in this like a limbic system, like fight or flight, a battle, instead of actually being able to talk about things when you're calm.
In our company, every new employee reads my Higher Clout Manifesto, and one of the things there is we don't talk about people, we talk to people. So we take it very serious. So when someone comes in and talks about Adrian, we're like, okay, did you talk to Adrian about it yet? And 90% of the time is like, well, no. And why not? Well, because I want to run it by you first. You're welcome to run it by me first, but you're going to end up going to Adrian. You guys are going to figure this out. Unless it's obviously a very nasty situation or something really terrible and we have to step in from an HR perspective. But rarely is it that. Is it some form of misunderstanding, miscommunication, disrespect, something? How do we keep a culture that's safe and it's inviting and it's calm and friendly while confronting some of these conflicts that are potentially brewing before they become big fights?
A handful of things come to mind. I'll start philosophical first and get to tactical. So first off, based on our work in prison, we say all the time to our clients, we say all of us are criminals and some of us are just more arrestable than others. So by that we mean that I'll speak for the guy talking right now. I'm both angelic and demonic. I am both honest and I'm dishonest. I'm both courageous and I'm a coward. I am, it's like I'm generous and I'm greedy, right? Both of those things happen at all times for all human beings. And if you meet somebody that's sure they're only one, run for the hills because they're lying to themselves and they'll lie to you easily. So first off, from a cultural perspective, if you want to be a leader that wants to lead a team that's going to do whatever it takes, you better invite people to get acquainted with their dark side.
Wow.
Now, these are things we don't talk about in the work setting to our own demise. Because there are ways in which we're covering our own asses. We're lying. We're like, pointing blame at somebody else. We're deflecting. We need to as a leader, listen, you need to put language in the culture where we actually call each other on our bullshit. If we do that, we've got a chance for turning the lights on and being honestly connected to current reality. Now, why would you want to do that? Because you can't get anywhere new until you own now. You know what I'm saying? Like if I don't own this moment and what's really happening, most people just want to treat symptoms all day long instead of getting to core issues. And if you get to core issues, now you've got a sober view and an ownership of current reality. Now you can go somewhere new. But if you don't own it and you just treat symptoms all day long, you can, rearrange the deck furniture on the Titanic, whatever people say now. You can do that, but you can't have anything authentic happen in the future because you're not connected to the moment that you're in. And I'm not like blowing smoke like being unicorns and rainbows. I mean like really, like are we that honest? Are we sure of what happened and who contributed and how we contributed? Really hard on the problem, really soft on the person, and really have language for the evil that exists in all of us. That's pretty heavy. But I really mean like how we're gonna like lie or look good and feel good and be right, be in control. Those are pretty easy to approach. Look good, feel good, be right, be in control. Those are ego needs. Those are survival needs. Everybody's doing that at all times. Some of us, there's something more important than that, right? I'm willing to look like a fool for the sake of the mission. I'm willing to like look like a fool and apologize and confess to somebody if I didn't treat them well for the sake of the relationship or whatever. Like there's something more important than my own survival. So number one, philosophically, you need to create a culture that's willing to deal with reality. Number one. Thinking practically, we do this on our team all the time. We have a no gossip policy as well. Similar type conversation. If someone comes to me, let's say if Dan comes to me and is saying something about Chad on my team, I'll always say, it's the same like you, have you talked to Chad about this? No, I haven't. Okay. I'll hear them out. Now your job is to go talk to Chad about this, and you've got 48 hours to go talk to Chad. If you don't, I'm going to go talk to Chad about what you just told me. So we start the timer. And they got 48 hours to go get it clear. And if not, I'll say, hey, Chad, has Dan talked to you? No? Well, he's got this thing with you. Can you go talk to him? And it's a lot harder, a lot harsher, if now we're having to send somebody to go get feedback instead of sending the person that's complaining to go give the feedback. So we don't tolerate it at all, just because it's witchcraft. I mean, the word for gossip etymologically comes from witchcraft. Like you're literally casting spells on people. That's what gossip does, right? Like, I want to change other people's opinions of you. How do I do that? By talebearing, by lying, by slander. And I'm casting a spell. I'm changing their future based on what I'm doing in the environment around them.
Wow, that's really powerful, man. That is, nobody's ever looked at it like that, right? Ah, come on, we're just venting. Come on, we're just commiserating. We're colleagues, and we all kind of agree. And it's what's wrong. We can't, we've got the right to talk to each other. But there's the right way to do it, and this isn't the way. And this is something we can really use in our personal lives too,
It's a low standard, man. Like, if you pay attention to how much you complain to your friends, and then ask yourself, are they really my friends, or are they just accomplices to the crime? Or am I just using them? And now we're using each other, and we're like lathering ourselves up in what can't happen in the world, which is what a complaint is. Instead of getting honest about it, like, yes, I'm complaining about, and I vent. I need to vent more often. That's why actually my business partner tells me, hey, just call me when you're pissed, man. And I'll just, because as you can imagine, I give myself to holding myself to the highest standard, right? I don't want to ask anybody to do anything I'm not, right? So I get really clear. Even just like had something stolen out of my yard this morning while I was gone at the golf course, came back, something was gone. And I'm pissed. I'm very pissed. And the next thing I said to myself was, I shouldn't have left it out.
It's your fault.
I shouldn't have left it out. It's on me, man. It's on me. I'm at least co-responsible. I'm not the guy that jumped the fence and stole something out of my yard. And after this, I'm going to go drive around, see if I can see this guy. But I look at myself, how did I contribute to the breakdown? So when we're complaining, we're not in that conversation. Therefore, nothing new can happen. And you lower the standard around yourself by complaining instead of being honest about it. How did I contribute to the complaint?
That's really powerful, man. Hopefully we hire right, maybe using the Harrison report, a good interview process, being honest with ourselves, finding out what really we need, all that stuff. Let's say in between we've done the right things, we've had good, conflicts, and we've managed it well. When it's time to say goodbye, for organizations, it's really tough, right? Especially good guys. You saw, I think, on my Harrison report that I personally have a high,
warmth and empathy scale.
Warmth and empathy, right? Which is tough because I also have very high expectations. How does a company with class eliminate folks that are getting in the way of their growth? These are what we call anchors versus motors, right? We're looking for motors to get this ship or this boat to move faster. If someone's an anchor, whether it's huge or small or whatever, how do we deal with that? How do we get that anchor? How do we cut that anchor while still being warm and empathetic and a decent human being?
Yeah, well, if you've done so most people don't do this well because they haven't generated a culture of feedback. Feedback is like, hey, let's look at reality. It's usually feedback is such this thing, and it's like a stage performance, and it's like all this tension or whatever. No. Let's get shoulder to shoulder and look at reality. What did we say was going to happen? Oh, we didn't have any goals either? Okay, leader, hey, get your shit together. But you've got some outcomes you're committed to, i.e. goals. I don't call them goals, but outcomes that I'm committed to. And then we've got reality. Are we hitting the goals? Well, we didn't hit the goals. Okay, good. Let's talk about it. What worked and what didn't work and what's wanted and needed. Those are always the three questions we ask. And if somebody's not hitting their goals, and you need to be talking about that right away, not punitive. Let's look at it. Like, your job as a leader is to be a resource for them to perform. That's your job. What is leadership? Getting results through other people. So you need to be on the same side of the table as them for a long time. This is what people don't do, by the way, is get on the same side of the table. Let's look at this thing. Let's do a great forensics on it and get them committed. What are they going to do next? And get that lined out. There might be some competency issues. There's definitely some attitudinal issues, ways they're approaching it, ways they're thinking about it. Your job as a leader is to change people's minds, invite them to have a brand new mindset. And if you don't know how to do that, give us a call. We'll help you do that. And then they go play ball again. And then you get to look. And for some people, you need to look next week. For some people, you wait till next month, maybe next quarter. You need to get clear. The more someone's struggling, the more you need to, I call it micro accounting instead of micromanaging. I don't want to manage anybody, but I do want to account, call people to account, i.e. accountability, which we can't do. You can't hold somebody accountable. You can give them the space to give an account. So if you're doing that on a frequent basis, when it's time to let someone go, there's no surprises. There are none, because we've been in the conversation so long and we both agree. You've been trying really hard. I've been trying really hard. I've been teaching you these 5 things and you're not doing the job, which is usually an indication that they don't want to do the job. Because if someone came to me and was missing their goal and they said, damn it, I can't figure this out. I've stayed up the last 3 nights and I watched 85 hours of YouTube and I read these 3 books and I'm going to this conference next month. I want to figure it out. That person, I'm fueling them. They're more committed than anybody and they're going to figure it out. They will, because they're committed to figuring it out. If someone's not hitting their goals consistently, they don't want to hit their goals. They don't want to.
Agreed.
They'll tell you they do, and they'll make the trade. You'll pay me some wages, and I'll act like I want to hit my goals. But if I'm not hitting my goals, I don't want to hit the goals. Now, why don't they? That's a fair conversation to have. So anyway, to your point is, if we do this really well, there's no surprises, and it's advocacy to let people go. Because if they're not performing, now, and the pressure is moderate, every great leader is going to push the pedal down. Next year, the pressure is going to be higher. So it's a gift to them to let them go now. Because if they're not hitting their goals now, they really won't be hitting it later. If they can't keep up with the pace today, they really won't be able to pick up, the pace in a year from now. So it's a gift to them. So you can really let them go. And, some people are going to think that's bullshit or whatever, but that's really the place to be in, is like, hey, this is a kind move.
Absolutely.
Is you're not happy here. I mean, everybody with dignity wants to be successful. They want to hit their goals, and everybody wants dignity and agency. So if people can't do it, it's really, and you've had the full conversations with them, even though it's scary to go move on, and if they've had a great relationship with you, which is their job, you can say, hey, I want to help you find a team, and trust me, I'll do everything I can to help you do that. You weren't a great fit for us, but I bet you're going to be a great fit for another team. I'll do whatever I can to help you find a spot. But this doesn't work anymore.
If at your place, they're not in the preference and performance theory mode where they're in their virtuous cycle, let them go and find what that is, and for them to be happy doing it. So most people are paranoid about turnover, and they want to save everybody, and it's just not. It's not good for either side. So
it's not good for either side. It's a big waste of time and money and stress.
Adrian, leave us off with one sentence or two about what every high-achieving, high-growth entrepreneurial company should be doing tomorrow, today, immediately.
They should find some set of ears that can listen into what they're doing, whether that's us or somebody else. Because depending on what they're committed to, I'm going to give a longer than one sentence answer, is my invite to everybody is to raise the bar. And give up all your stories about why it has to be the way it is today, because that's bullshit. It doesn't have to be the way it is today. No one cares. Raise the bar. Now, in order to actually shift, transform, you got to get some thinking that's not as committed to the Kool-Aid as you are. So get somebody. And if you look on our website says says most coaching is bullshit, most training is bullshit, most assessments are bullshit. So we agree with the cynicism in the culture because it is. So, but you got to get somebody that's willing to go in there, have the real conversations, and tell you the truth, and help you have the tools to shift things and help you hold the space. Because if you aren't showing up to work in a passionate way, you won't be proud of what you create.
Love it. That's very powerful, Adrian. How does someone find you? You have your own podcast. Tell us about that and where else they can find you and call you.
We have a lot of fun stuff going on. So we have our own podcast, the Naked Leadership Podcast, because any leadership that's worth doing is very vulnerable. So it's Naked Leadership. You can listen to us. We teach a lot of we take issues that our clients are going through and talk about them in real time. So it's not like this theoretical 5-step bullshit stuff. We talk about how to approach things. We talk about the tensions baked in there. We really talk about the hidden side of leadership. So we started that podcast to answer the question, maybe it doesn't have to be so lonely at the top. So, because everybody loves to bite that hook, line, and sinker. It's so lonely at the top and feel sorry for themselves. No, it's lonely because you're alone, man. You're so isolated out of your pride. So stop being so proud and get the help you need. Anyway, so that's the Naked Leadership Podcast. You can find me and my stuff on Adrian.K on Instagram. We've got a couple... obviously, if you want to connect, you've got a business that's thriving, you got a business that's in trouble, anything that needs a rapid change, we're great in that context. So either if the ship is sinking, call us, we'll get shit straight right away. If you're primed for growth and you need to shift things, we're great in those moments as well. If you just want the status quo, we're not your people. And if you want to just optimize the system, don't call us. There's other people that do that. We are the ones that actually help people fuel rapid change. So if that you're interested, there's two other things I want to talk about real quick. If you're just a leader and you're apathetic at all, or you're frustrated at all, or you're wondering about what your capacity is, I've got an experience for you called the Revenant Process. It's a 4-day personal leadership accelerant. We do about 3 or 4 of these a year. I went through this process 15 years ago. We just surveyed 2,000 people that went through. 97% of them said it was one of the top 3 experiences of their life. 2,000 people, 97% of them said it was one of the top 3 experiences of their life. It's 4 days. You're in a room for 12 hours a day. We're not messing around. It's really clear about who the hell are you? And how do you make an impact on other people? And how do you live your word? And how do you make a shift? And how do you live your legacy right now? Anyway, these deeper conversations, there's no conversation too dangerous. It's very interactive. It's not me on a stage hopping around like nothing wrong with the Tony Robbins thing. God bless the guy. But we're not doing that. We've got 40 people in a room. We're not messing around. That's called the Revenant Process. You can go to wearerevenant.com. There's one coming up the end of October in Hawaii. It's going to be a very special room. Every room is unique. This one's shaping up to be a lot of killers in that room. So that's going to be not killers like prison killers, like awesome. Anyway,
we had to clarify that based on the story.
Yes, you will be safe, but it'll be the most dangerous, safe environment you've ever been in. So number 1. Number 2 is we've got a new training we're doing called Icon. It's going to be in Tuscany. It's the second week of November. It's for people that either have exited or are approaching an exit. So it's what do you do? How do you prepare yourself for that moment in time that you hit all the goals and are faced with the terror of success, really? And how do you prepare yourself for that? Prepare yourself, prepare your team, prepare your world, prepare your family for all that. That's who's going to be in this room. So people that have had a successful exit or about to have a successful exit or want to have one in 5 years, there's no time too early to start this conversation to set your world up so you can actually enjoy the success you've been sacrificing for. So that's called Icon. Both you can access them on our website. That's takenewground.com/icon for that one. That's coming up second week in November. It's going to be a blast, and it's on Lake Garda, one of the top 20 resorts in the world. It's really nice.
Adrian, this the next few months is absolutely bananas, and I'm traveling all over the place. I'd love to hear about the next one for myself.
Yeah, man.
Really cool stuff. Adrian, your favorite book?
One of the books that I read all the time, that I have all my clients read, is it's a book by Koga and what's his other last name? Japanese fella. It's called The Courage to Be Disliked. And it's not about that. I mean, that's kind of the catchy marketing title. It's really a survey of Adlerian psychology versus Freudian psychology. Freud screwed the world by convincing us that we are our past. That's essentially, cognitive therapy is built on what's happening now has roots back to when I was 5. And not that that's not true, not that that's not there, right? Or definitely we have phantoms of that and things that we learned when we were a kid, we're still doing now, whatever. But that's not all. There's no possibility in that conversation. And so his compatriot was called Alfred Adler. Adler said, I am my future. I am what I'm committed to. A teleological view instead of an etiological view. So it's a survey of that. It's an allegory. It's an old philosopher talking to a young man. And it's really around personal responsibility and learning to dance in reality. That's one of my favorite books, The Courage to Be Disliked.
That's my next book.
Do it, man. You'll love it.
Adrian, you've been awesome, man. I know we started off with a crazy rant because, again, we didn't prepare, right? This is Adrian and I are not preparers. We just show up to stuff, and often late. But really, really, really enjoyed having you on. Thank you, Adrian, for spitting some brilliant ideas and comments and thoughts all about leadership. Appreciate you.
Love being with you, man. Love your company. Excited to partner with you down the road and make a big difference with so many people, man.
Let's do it, my brother. Thank you, Adrian.
All right, brother. Be well.
And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. I'm Avetis, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.